Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Overcoming the Podcast. As always, I am Taylor, and today I have a special guest with me. I'm excited to dive into this deeper. I had my own experience with the things she's going to be talking about, which we'll get into, but seriously, mind blowing. I have Sam with me from Nutra LLC, and she talks about all kinds of things, somatic experiencing. She did some TRE. We did some sound baths. Like I'm just excited for you all to hear about this. It's very body-based trauma recovery. And for someone who's been healing for a while and has never experienced anything like this, like I see this as the future. So I am so excited about this episode and the future of all of this. And I'm just so thankful that Sam is with us here today. So Sam, thank you again. Do you want to say hi to everyone? Introduce anything that I messed up there? Feel free to fix.
No, that was perfect. Thank you so much for having me, firstly.
Of course.
It is definitely an honor to be in this space with you to just chat and tell people about what I do and what you do and how we've kind of combined forces in a lot of ways. So I'm absolutely overjoyed to be here and to tell people more about TRE and how I like to help people. So yeah.
And so for people who don't know what TRE is, can you kind of explain it a little bit?
Yeah, of course. So TRE is tension and trauma releasing exercises. And this somatic therapy was created by Dr. David Berselli. And he just retired in Phoenix, Arizona. But it was around 2009 when he discovered that he was in a war zone, and the people that were involved in his space, there were adults, there were children, and the adults didn't want to tremor and shake during this scary time because they didn't want to appear weak. And the children huddled in Dr. Berselli's lap and were shaking and trembling.
Interesting.
And so he noticed that the kids were able to bounce back almost immediately, and the adults were the ones that really struggled bouncing back. So then he started focusing more on the tremor mechanism. And here we are. We have a little interrupter here, just, causing a ruckus.
Hi, my friend.
He says, hello, this is Mowgli. Everyone.
Hi, Mowgli.
And
we've met before, huh? He's helped out with some of my energy work before, I gotta say.
We have a full crowd today.
I love it. I put mine in the other room. I was like, he snores though. Mine will snore the entire time. People will be like, what is that?
This actually, just hang on one second.
You're
I didn't
fine.
realize that the ruckus was going to cause more of a ruckus.
Okay, and we're back. We're deciding, like, do we scrap this? No, we don't scrap this. Dogs are our kids. I mean, you have a cat too.
They are.
It's fine.
Are our kids.
People understand. But yes, so TRE. Okay, so what's really interesting here to me is like this whole idea of like shaking. So are you thinking like, because I mean, I think of when I'm scared maybe, or like I have anxiety a little bit, like there's a little bit of shakes. Is that kind of the shaking that you're talking about, or is there something different?
Yeah, it's the same. It's the same mechanism.
Okay.
So it's the same as when a dog gets scared, when there's fireworks, they start to shake. Our bodies also start to shake because we have this excess energy that we need to release.
Okay.
And so what TRE does is we tire different muscle groups through different exercises. And then after that, we initiate the tremor mechanism and we start to shake in our inner thighs, moving into our psoas and iliacus muscles, and then up the spine along the vagus nerve. So all of these muscles then release tension and trauma that we store in our muscles.
The psoas especially is one of those where, for those who don't know, that's where a lot of trauma is stored, because in our fight and flight, that is one of the muscles that is mainly activated. And then the vagus nerve as well helps us tap into the rest and digest. So this is all like stuff that helps us get back to a safe and calm nervous system, and also release what is stored for trauma.
Right. So the psoas, just to give a little bit more in detail, it's in the front of the body, right in front of the, like in front of the hip. So in
Mm-hmm.
the front body, right? And so when we're scared, we tend to go into the fetal position, right? So
Yep.
that muscle then contracts. And what we want to do is we want to stretch it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when we're able to really open up and release trauma
Yep.
that way. So
Yeah. And I found it really interesting too, because before I started doing any kind of yoga or anything like that to work with my body to incorporate for my healing at all, my hip flexors were so tight that I like had a rounded back. I could not even bend forward. I remember I was in this musical when I was a junior in high school, and you had to kind of like sit down on your calves and then like sit basically on your feet and then bend over. And the idea was to be in the group that your back was flat and then you would like pop up one at a time. And it was this really cool like rainbow effect. I had to be taken out of that number because I couldn't go down far enough,
oh wow.
because my hip flexors limited my ability to actually like lay down to connect all the way with on my thighs. Like there was a gap. It was like I was an arched back where everyone else was able to lay flat. That's
Wow.
how impacting it was when I was in that deep time of stress and I didn't even
Yes.
recognize. It was
Yeah.
wild.
We don't.
No.
And I think growing up, like there's a lot of things that we just didn't know back in when we were growing up. So
Yes.
yeah. And now we're learning. Now
Yes. And
we're
I'm like, okay.
learning.
And so here's the thing too. You did a little bit of a TRE session with me, and actually we posted that live. So if anyone is interested in seeing that, that was probably one of the coolest things I've experienced, secondary to the sound bath thing that I did with you, which
Love
we'll
that.
talk about in a minute as well. But like,
Yeah.
oh my goodness. So when people are thinking like, oh, shaking, like I think of like, oh, maybe when you're cold outside, whatever, it's like you can feel it throughout your entire body. And it's so strange to me because it's almost like you have control, but you don't.
Right. Yeah.
But like, I don't know. It's just the weirdest feeling.
Yeah, I'll touch on that. So you do have control of stopping your tremors, and
Mhm.
that's something I really love to empower clients with,
Okay.
is telling them you can stop your tremors at any time. You never have to ask me. This is your practice. You are in control of your body. And that's one of the main things. So I focus on the heart chakra and the solar plexus. So opening the heart and also coming into our own personal power.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what the big focus with TRE is I'm happy to lead clients into this, but eventually I'm also open to push baby out of the nest and have them also practice on their own and integrate this into their lifestyle.
Yep.
Because I know personally, oh, if I'm stressed, I just know I'm like, all right, I got to set 20 minutes aside after my workout. I'm going to tremor and just give myself some peace, relax, maybe do an Epsom salt bath right afterwards.
Yeah.
And then I'm able to, resume at a regulated state.
Yeah, that's exactly. So like we didn't do like a full session. But for people who are like, well, what does this look like? So basically one of the exercises that we did is Sam had me lay on my back, kind of in like a butterfly position. Okay. So you have your feet on the floor and your knees are pointed towards the ceiling, and then you kind of open up your hips wide like a butterfly. Okay. And then slowly bring in your muscles at different points. So like different parts start to shake. And when it gets to certain points, like I do Pilates. So for me, it's like I'm used to the shake when it comes to working out. But when it came to this, it felt very different because it was more than just muscles you're working. It was you're connected with your whole body. So like the shake started in my hips a little bit, like thinking of when you're tired, you're working out, you're pushing your body or whatever. We know that the shake usually in working out is good. That means that it's helping us build muscle, right? But then it went past my hips in certain positions and it started to go up my spine, and it felt like my stomach and my abs and everything in there. And those postural muscles were also like shaking. But what I found really interesting is how connected it was to energy, because I was able to get to like mid spine and then it stopped. And do you remember what you said it was?
Yes, it was your heart chakra blocked.
Which is interesting because so for those who are new to energy work, heart chakra is like that heart space. Usually when there's like a lot of like deep emotional pain, that's kind of where like we kind of store that, right? So it's like the feeling of heartbreak. You ever heard like someone's heartbroken? Like when you are in pain or loss or grief or anything like that, you can actually feel the physical sensation around your heart. Actually, it's tuning into that energy center right there around your heart, which you call the heart chakra. And it was really interesting because earlier that day, I had recorded a very vulnerable podcast episode that I used as the preview for season 2. And it brought back up for me some heavy feelings of grief and loss for the things that I went through this summer. And I've also been processing a whole bunch of other things, like as we all do. And so my body was not able to shake past that blocked heart, which was super, super interesting for me.
It was very interesting. A question for you, did anything pop up for you emotionally or anything random over the next maybe 48 to 72 hours after that?
I was thinking about my breakup a lot. Like, and I think it was a betrayal. It was a betrayal wound, right? So like for me, part of the thing was that I was lied to by this person and I fell for someone who was basically someone completely different.
Yeah.
Like they lied to me about their identity essentially. And it really hurt. And I found out after the fact. So I didn't really process it with that person. It was like I was grieving 2 people. But when I recognized these little things that popped up were like betrayal wound things in from early childhood. And it's like they linked. You know, have you ever had that happen before where like it's the same type of wound, but it's a different experience? So they start linking together.
Yes. Okay, that's huge. So, and during the session, we did release some physical, so there were physical experiences. So like when I brought touch into play, which I don't always do in my TRE sessions, but with you, like we're very comfortable. We do energy work together and there is physical touch to release, especially that heart space for you.
Yes.
And then your sacral and root chakras, that where our hips are, where we store, you know, a lot of this stress and tension. So I'm pulling all of that energy out. But then I was focusing on your head. And I remember you're like, oh God, that just reminded me of my mother.
Yeah. Isn't that wild?
Yes. So, you know, these little things that pop up because of physical reactions. So that was stored in your body and we released that.
Yeah.
And saying like, oh, your childhood experiences, you know, kind of commingle with this recent betrayal. That makes sense. So that's why things felt heavier, especially in that heart space. And you were able to clear a lot of that out pretty quickly. But yeah, and what's beautiful about it is once we release it from our body, it's gone.
Yeah.
It's gone once we mentally process that through the prefrontal cortex, through the rational thinking mind, then we're like, okay, I can think back on this and this no longer physically triggers me because I've processed this mentally and physically through the limbic system and the brainstem through TRE.
Yep. Which is amazing. And, you know, and for me, I was sitting there and I was like, well, that's really weird. Like, there's just like, I would have like visualizations of certain clothes I would wear as a child. And then memories within that. Like I remember one of the things for me, which I wouldn't think is trauma, but being sent to this camp basically for smart kids and coming back, all the rest of the kids were having fun and I was going to school to get ahead. And one of the things that I remembered is that early on in my childhood, I was kind of like the show pony. I was the smart one, but I was the smart one for them to show off and be like, look how smart she is. Look, here, recite this, do that. And like my identity at that point and long into my life was me being smart. And, you know, cause I was the kid with the straight A's. I had a 4th grade reading level when I was supposed to go to kindergarten. And that's how much that they I know. Yeah. That's how much that they put that into me. By the time I was 2, I knew all of my states and capitals, but I was looking for attention and pleasing in that way because that's how I got it. So instinctively, I knew, okay, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to do these flashcards. Oh my gosh, you're praising me. Yes, I got to do more. Right. And so that's how I got most of my attention.
Wow.
And it's interesting because I was raised by narcissistic parents. So it's what I did for them. And it took me a long time and a lot of perfectionist tendencies. And anytime I messed up with anything, even small, it reflected on them and they made sure that I knew it. So I think that anytime that like this shame, I felt like I made a mistake. I didn't see something. I missed something I should have known. I teach people what to look out for, and I was tricked. Right. Like someone lied to me. I didn't catch on. I mean, I caught some things, but I definitely didn't catch what happened. And I just felt like an idiot for allowing my feelings to get to that far. And I was just thinking what other people would think about me if they knew.
Mhm.
And it's interesting that it linked like that to trauma for me. But a lot of my wounds with my parents is what are people going to think about you based on what you do? You're a reflection of me. So you need to act a certain way. And it's always been that way, even in small ways, but definitely in the big ways. So it was just super interesting that that was linked. And also, okay, so let's talk a little bit about sound bath
Okay. Yeah.
because I want to know your thoughts on this. And this also, to be honest, this experience might be why some of my heart space was heavier because I literally have been going through every single possible betrayal, trauma, relationship that I trusted that hurt me since this experience. And it's been very interesting to say the least, but so powerful. So, okay. So I went to one of Sam's sound baths. And for people who are not familiar, can you explain a little bit as to what that is, why, that kind of thing? You'll say it way better than I will.
So there are these crystal bowls, and it's a type of sound therapy. And each bowl has a different pitch. So we have A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and they all relate to a different chakra.
So the energy centers, right?
The energy centers, we have our root, sacral, solar plexus, heart, throat, third eye, crown. There are multiple other chakras that aren't commonly talked about. But typically how I focus when I'm working in my sound baths, I like to start in the heart space because everything starts in the heart space.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the green and the yellow. So it is the heart and the solar plexus in combination. So those two notes are right next together. So you hear a bit of like dissonance. It's almost a little uncomfortable.
Yes.
Because they're right next together. But boy, does that clear you out.
Yes.
And yeah, so energetically, what happens, a lot of people, their feet will start to sweat, their chakras will start to clear. And so then you're in a theta state in your brain.
Mm-hmm.
So you're able to relax, if anything, sometimes process things, sometimes journey. So I've included sound baths into TRE sessions, and I have clients that will self-journey spiritually, which is so incredible. And people's gifts become amplified when we're able to just clear these energy centers that have been clogged.
That's so cool.
Yeah. Yeah. It's actually quite magical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're like, how does this, and like, here's the thing for me, I'm like, even though I consider myself a spiritual person now, it's because I've seen so much evidence of it, right? It's like the way I think about it is like meditation and mindfulness used to be super woo woo and people were like, whatever, that doesn't do anything. And now there's so much research to be like, oh, it can actually change the brain. Okay, we're going to like keep on this. And this is now like evidence-based practice, right? I have a feeling that Reiki and energy healing and everything like that will be the same kind of thing when we're looking at trauma years down the road. Not only based on personal experiences, but practitioners sharing things like all kinds of things. It really, really does a lot. And I think what's really interesting, so like I believe that like the different sound frequencies can impact different energy centers, right? And so if anyone's ever heard of like binaural beats, where the idea is like you stick headphones in your ear and then it kind of rotates back and forth, like bilateral stimulation, which we talked about before, it just kind of goes back and forth with the sound waves with different frequencies, and different frequencies are supposed to tune into different energy and do different things. Okay. I enjoy using those And I definitely have some impacts in relaxation. Okay. Or like, decreasing anxiety, decreasing like feelings of tension in my body. That's happened before. I have never done anything in person up until this point. And when I tell you that it was okay, I have considered my spirit self a spiritual person probably for about 5 years now, heavily for the last two, and like, been all into the woo woo. And I've had some really cool experiences when I'm meditating. Like I feel really awesome, really connected. In tarot now, like I just know what things mean sometimes before the cards even show me. Like it's really cool stuff, right? However, I have never connected to myself and my soul in the way that I did in this. So basically what happens is, she just gets you in the position where you're comfortable. For me, it was laying down. We had a bolster underneath our knees and just got to the point where while she's like dinging these crystal bowls, your whole body is vibrating. Like it is so intense and so powerful. Like think of like if you could sit on a roller coaster with different dings coming at you, like your whole body is like it's just that's even the closest that I can explain it. And so I'm sitting there, and then I think it was that frequency that you did, the ones that were like they kind of clashed, but they kind of went together. And it's probably like what 15 minutes in, and then all of a sudden I'm laying there completely relaxed, and it's just like I visualize myself laying down. It's almost like I'm looking above myself. Okay, and all of a sudden, I just start feeling this overwhelming sense of peace. And I hear the saying, like, you're not alone. You're okay. You're safe. And I was like, and it honestly, it was a very comforting voice. It wasn't scary. It kind of sounded like me, it sounded like an older version of me, to be honest. And I was
Your
like,
higher self, potentially.
yeah, that's what I'm thinking. And I was like, okay. And then all of a sudden, I felt like this warmth around me. And I was just laying there. And I heard that it's all brought you here. And I was like, what? Like, what do you mean it's all brought me here? And then I'm laying there and tears just start streaming down my face. Like, I don't know if you've ever been crying where you're like completely relaxed, but tears are just falling. But literally everything in me was relaxed and like completely continuous tears streaming down my face, like laying down with my eyes towards the ceiling, completely closed. And then just like at a diagonal motion down my cheeks and to like the sides of my mouth. They're just like tears continuously pouring out. And I'm like, I didn't feel sad. I didn't feel heavy. It was just tears. And I was like, okay. And I'm feeling this peace. And then I get to this point where it feels like there's just a bunch of people and a bunch of energy around me. And I'm like, okay. And then I realized what was happening. I never saw anything. I just saw me, but it kind of felt like anyone who's ever betrayed me or hurt me. We're talking about the kid who teased me once in elementary school, the person who assaulted me, the parent who has completely made my life miserable forever. I mean, like everything, this most recent betrayal, like all of them, it felt like they were sitting around me in a circle and they took turns in their own voice sharing the impact that what happened to them, like what they did to me, had on me, and that I did what I was supposed to do. And the one that stood out to me the most was my mother's voice. And it was the same type of words that she would use. However, she would never say something like this. And she basically was like, baby, I'm proud of you. I've tried to stop you. I tried to dim your light and you never stopped. And instead you became stronger. And that's exactly what you needed to do. And I can never tell that to you, but I am so proud of you. And I just started bawling and shaking and releasing. And then I'm like, seriously, like the person who should be behind bars for everything they did to me was like, you did exactly what you were supposed to do. Thank you for this. And it's like, it was just the most incredible, like, this brought you here. You've done it right. Like, we experienced it had to happen this way for what, and people have different beliefs about that. But even the person who I was most upset about was like, I needed you to set me straight in that way. And I needed you to wake me up. Like, I'm sorry it happened that way. I care about you. Thank you for doing this for me. And I'm sorry I hurt you. And I was like, huh? It's like, think of like anyone who's ever hurt you who says, thank you for having me in your life. And this allowed you to be who you are. And I'm sorry I hurt you in this way. And you responded exactly the way that you need to, because it brought you here. Like all of the things that I didn't even think that bothered me, that I didn't even consciously remember. And it's just like their voice pops up and I'm like, huh. And every single time someone said something, I mean, we're talking about like 20 people, like 20 different voices all around me in different areas.
You know what I'm thinking about right now in my brain? I'm like, it's such a deep way to forgive. It's such a
Yeah.
deep way to forgive. And now I'm analyzing the word forgiveness, and I'm looking at how forgiveness is seen as weak as well.
Mm-hmm.
Forgiveness is like, okay, I forgive you. You wronged me. And maybe I'm feeling almost shameful of being tricked. But spinning that, flipping it on its head, and having people who should be asking for forgiveness, they're saying, thank you.
Yeah. Powerful.
What a powerful, powerful flip on words.
Yeah.
And it's just that. It's just the usage of the words. And that to me is the loudest part of that story.
Yeah. And
How
it
incredible.
was, and it was interesting. It's like, it was mutually beneficial, even if, like it helped me, like the people I've reported are accountable to themselves now. I hope they've changed. I don't know. But you know what I mean? Like it's, I think that sometimes for me, I I try not to hold resentment. I really do. I know there are some people in this world who genuinely do like taking pleasure in people's pain, and that really makes me sad, because I do think that's people who are so deeply hurt that they can't even confront it themselves. I do. I've dealt with many types of abuse. I grew up with someone who, to this day, their wish that I know is to make my life a living hell because I ruined something for them as a child. And it's just like, still tries to follow, still tries to come around and keep tabs on me. And it's just, they've always had this very vengeful attitude. And, so I've seen that, and I'm like, I don't think there is anything that, at least in this lifetime, I believe, that can be saved about this person. However, what was powerful is what felt like their higher self. And it's like their inner wisdom. You know what I mean? It's something that they would never say to me. Like I said, my mom would never say anything like that to me. She denies my reality. She tells me that trauma doesn't exist, anything like that. But it was the tone and the way it was said and everything. I was like, that's my mom. But it wasn't who my mom is right now. It felt like the most wise version of my mom possible. And, for those who believe in higher self, it felt like the higher selves of everyone who has ever wronged me coming and talking to me and saying, like, you're here. And some people are like, if you only knew what's coming, if you only knew what this has allowed, like, you're almost there. And I was just like, almost there for what? And they're like, you'll see. And it was just like, your peace, you've got this. And I was just like sobbing and releasing and shaking. And then at the end, it was like back to my voice that felt older. Again, I would consider my higher self. It was just like, you did exactly what you needed to do, and you're ready. And I was like, ready for what? But it was just this overwhelming sense of peace. And like, there was stuff that I held on to that, I was just so mad at this person or so frustrated. Or why I kept asking myself, why did this happen? Why did that happen? Why did they do this to me? Whatever. I wasn't asking why anymore. I was just at peace with the scenario. I had worked through my stuff, and most of it is stuff that I had worked through, to be honest, but it was ready to release. And it was like my brain needed to hear it from them. And that was the way of giving that experience for me. It was the most powerful thing I've ever experienced. I felt like waves of warmth as I released. Like, it was just incredible, and sobbing the entire time, just sobbing. And then I woke up and I was like, I was crying the whole time. And you were like, what? Like, you couldn't even tell. I was just still.
I couldn't
sobbing.
tell that you were crying. And, this, like, bringing it all together here. So I do body-based work, And I also work on activating people spiritually. That's what I'm learning, is that I definitely activate.
Yes, you do.
individuals.
Yes, you do.
So, and also coming from a mind aspect, I also will bring in intuitive coaching with individuals, because, hey, let's attack from an integrative perspective. Let's bring it all together.
Mhm.
So mind, body, soul, or consciousness, however you want to talk about it.
Yep.
And I see people who really can struggle hanging on to things physically and mentally. They're like, okay, I get it, but we're still in these negative thought patterns sometimes. And maybe we don't even realize that we haven't released this trauma, which there are a lot of traumas we have in our past that we don't even remember.
Yeah.
And that's the best part, is like when you just tremor, you pull it out of your body. You don't know what it was. That's fine. It doesn't matter. You're releasing it anyway. So coming from a soul perspective or a consciousness perspective, someone that may, struggle in those realms, and they're able to tap in that their higher self, and whatever is coming to them, whether it's colors, whether it's objects, whether it's animals, symbols, that is the guiding light that really helps people transform and helps them overcome some of these obstacles that otherwise in modern day life, they're like, oh, man, I'm just carrying all of this with them in their backpack, right?
Yeah. And I almost wonder too, if maybe, because I do a lot of meditation, I do a lot of connection with my spirituality and, connecting with my higher self and things of that nature. My intuition has gotten stronger since I've been healing. I can hear my own inner voice, a lot more, right? Because I'm not constantly worrying about what other people think about me, et cetera, et cetera. And so I wonder too, if my experience with EMDR played into that as well, because I do so much visualizing with the sensory based stuff in EMDR. Because when I do it, I use buzzers in my hand. So I was used to vibration being a release for triggers. So I wonder if the full body with the sound vibration was like, all right, this is like mega EMDR, let's go.
Wow.
Because every single time in EMDR, I feel a release and I feel better. And a lot of times I'll visualize things like that while I'm doing things. Like my inner child we'll do like a round table thing. Like my inner child will be hanging there and I'll bring in my inner teen. I'm like, all right, what are we talking about? But this time it was different people. And that's what was different for me, is that I've never visualized other people in anything I do. It's always past versions of me. So, and I still didn't see them, but I heard them. I brought them in to my consciousness, right? And so I think my body for a while has been wanting to release this, survivors overcoming silence is literally, I was silenced, I was wronged, right? Like that's the whole reason this exists. And I don't want other people to feel alone. I want people to get help getting through this. So the fact that I finally gotten to the point where I'm like, I'm ready to release all of this hurt and step into my true power and my calling, which I believe is this and more, right? And knowing that I'm on the brink of something. And then we get to this like higher level where my higher self is like, all right, you ready? Let's do this. And like at a soul spiritual level, like all of this stuff that I know I've been working through, but like also aren't consciously aware of all of this all the time, comes through at once in this extremely powerful experience, because my whole body is sitting there vibrating and calm and moving all this energy and just, amazing.
Oh, I'm so happy you experienced that.
Yeah. I like nothing like it.
Yeah.
Nothing like it.
And it's just, I'm trying to think now too. So we've done kind of the cocktail of what I like to do. So I do sound baths, I do Reiki, and I do TRE and intuitive guidance. Sometimes a mixture of all of it. So I like to look at the individual and go very person-based, person-centric, and just kind of go for it.
Yep.
We also did a Reiki session. So we did energy work together.
That's true.
Yeah. And I'm trying to remember what your experience was with that.
It was I honestly, when we did that, I like could feel things clearing,
Yes.
but I didn't necessarily visualize anything. But I remember you being like, this is clearing really fast. Like with
Ah,
both of our energy, like this is clearing very fast. And I did, I felt
yeah.
relief, but it wasn't like visualizing any memories or anything like that. My body just felt lighter.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. I remember that now. And so I remember I was working on your heart again, and then you were working on your heart simultaneously and then cleared.
Yeah.
So people who also have, experienced doing energy work or having energy work done on them, your body is able to just clear any blockages pretty quickly within like a session or so. Otherwise, sometimes it takes a while to unclog.
It does. And like I've been doing this for years. So I mean,
Yeah.
probably like 3 years now, honestly, Reiki. But even so, it's what I've been told is it's like layers, right? Some things are not ready to come out, and that's
Exactly.
okay. And so like, but I feel like I've gotten to a really deep layer in my own healing, my own energy, my own everything in healing, honestly, to the point where I'm just like, all right, we're good. And
Yeah.
then a couple weeks later, it all comes up and it's like, okay, we're good. Like it's just how
Yeah.
fast I move through things now really just
Yeah.
blows my mind. Like
It is.
I can't explain it, but
Another thing that I love to emphasize with people too is we do get clogged, and life is, in torpor. It's ups and downs, it's
mhm,
sideways, all over the place, upside down. And it's so important that we protect our energy.
yeah.
And so that's a big thing, is like making sure we cut energetic cords from all the individuals, even if it's a happy experience. We just want to make sure that we're containing our own energy and it's not leaching out in some way. So
Mhm,
after all of these sessions, I always make sure I protect myself and clear the energy of the individual. And then I also love to focus on teaching my client how to do that too,
mhm.
just learning how to release the energy from the day, because that's what it is. It's an accumulation day after day after day.
Yep.
And then you're like, oh, I'm feeling heavy here. Ooh. And
Yep.
and that's the thing, is like, even as someone who works with people, I have to work on myself daily too.
Well,
I do.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure a whole bunch because you can easily
Yeah.
get it's like anyone, it's like compassion fatigue, right? Like think of like energetically. Like yeah, obviously like emotionally, but it's just like at an energetic level that is so much more as
Mhm.
well. So,
Mhm.
and I have found too that like sometimes the smallest step to take towards protecting your energy is setting a boundary.
Yes.
Yep.
Boundaries.
If you're
Boundaries.
not like, I don't know how to energetically do anything with my body, what? It can be as simple as, no, thank you. I
No,
don't
thank
have space for that today. That's it.
Yeah. Oh, I'll get to it soon.
Mhm.
And checking in with yourself before you go ahead and say yes, yes, yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
then you get overloaded. And it's not only just like checking in with yourself mentally, but you'll learn how to check in with your body as well.
Uh,
How certain things feel. You can do a body scan, which we talk about in my course, and there's all kinds of resources for that out there. Just really being able to learn what your body feels like at baseline and what is too much and what's okay and like how to listen to yourself. Um, if people are new to checking in with their body, what kind of tips would you give?
hmm. I would start with um, just some body-based exercises, yoga, meditation. And
Mm-hmm.
meditations where you're doing check-ins. You're saying, relax the top of your head. Let's move down and relax the eyes into the back of the skull. And then you go down and you realize, as you're checking in with each part, your body deeply relaxes to the
Mm-hmm.
point where it's sinking. And then, oh my gosh, it's maybe floating, at that
Mm-hmm.
point, right? So it being able to take your body to a different ethereal experience, that is kind of what makes you like, ooh, this stuff is kind of cool. And when it comes to yoga, and I would say breath work too, breath work gets us into our bodies pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Yoga is not only, so yoga in the Western world is like, you go in, you work out, you roll up your mat, you spray everything down and you take off,
Mm-hmm.
probably during Shavasana, and you cause a ruckus. And that's not yoga. Yoga is not just the movements. Yoga is life. Yoga is mindfulness.
Mm-hmm.
Yoga is, I'm slicing my lemon for my lemon water.
Mm-hmm.
And romanticizing slicing your lemon, because then you're nourishing your body with this beautiful lemon water that you're about to consume.
Mm-hmm.
And then, yeah, so, and with yoga, once you start doing that practice on a daily basis, and meditation and breath work, you really start to come into your body and you start to change. You really, really start to change.
Yeah.
So I think those are some really great first steps, even before doing something like TRE.
Mm-hmm.
I would say sound baths are something that you can jump in probably at any point, because your body will open up when it is ready. And I always tell my clients that. I'm like, they're like, oh, my heart space, I want to feel, but I just don't want to feel the loss of things in my life, and I'm afraid to feel. And I'm like, listen, we're here together. I'm here to support you,
Mm-hmm.
so that we can move forward together.
Mm-hmm.
And just, oh my gosh, it brings so much joy to my life. Like like right now I'm in this moment where I'm like, oh, I'm thinking, I literally just lost all train of thought, and I'm thinking of like the clients that I've supported and that they've supported me, and we've grown together.
Yep.
And it is so beautiful. And I'm like, listen, our human experience should not be subjected to this tiny box of trying to control. I feel maybe a little sad, and I feel maybe a little bit happy, and some joy here and there, maybe a little surprise.
Mm-hmm.
This is not the human experience. There are complexities of emotions where you're happy and sad at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
There's love without attachment. There's such a wide array in the human experience, only if you're open to receive that and also give that back.
Mm-hmm.
And feeling supported with humans, because we can't do this alone. We're not supposed to do this alone.
Yeah.
And being able to develop the tool sets to experience them without overwhelm, without getting into fight or flight, without freezing.
Mm-hmm.
Because we know rationally, hey, I know what's going on. Hey, this is what I'm feeling in my body. What is my soul saying? What is my heart telling me?
Mm-hmm.
Is this a hell yes or a hell no? Or maybe somewhere in between? Who knows? Yep. So yeah, it's creating that inner dialogue and that dialogue with the people that support you, so that we can start building this tool set to be able to be resilient to whatever comes our way, and to not be afraid and live in that fearful state
all the time.
Yeah. I just, yeah. Oh, I just had a moment.
I love it.
I love it. Oh, excuse me. I was a scientist before this.
Yeah.
So I was a microbiologist in Idaho, and science was my life for 30 years. And coming into this realm where I'm, still working through the science of it. Their TRE is backed by science.
Yep.
And meditation is backed by science, breathing techniques, right? All of this is backed by science. There's still more to learn, obviously.
Yeah.
But we are in such a different realm now that it's so new, and I am just like free falling back into it. And it's so beautiful. I wouldn't go back. I wouldn't go back.
I love that. I love that. And yeah, I found too that like, we are connected, and our brain and our body is a lot smarter than we give it credit for. That I wouldn't have gone into that type of experience in the sound bath if I wasn't ready for that. If something like that happened to me, gosh, I think even 5 years ago, I would have literally been like, nope, and ran out of the room. And I know this because I literally used to do that in therapy and be like, I'm not doing this. And I would run away. Me, yes, I know you wouldn't think me, but like I literally ran from processing trauma. Okay.
Wow.
So if something like that came up, I would be so in this flight mode that I wouldn't even be able to understand what was happening. Okay. But since I have been in this mode continuously of working through things and, just like really what I feel like is transmuting negative energy into this light, into a lesson, into something to be shared, into, whatever it is. And it comes out of my body now. It doesn't get stuck as much anymore. Even with the most recent thing, I I was reflecting and I was like, I could be really down because if this happened to anyone else or even me years ago, I would have been down for months, like immobilized, unable to process anything, been so heavy, been whatever. And it's a testament to the healing work that I've done that within a month, I was able to get myself out of complete freeze to dealing with some of my deepest triggers and moving through that and actually feeling hopeful, connected, positive, making strides in my business, being able to support other people, being willing to hold space for others, being willing to take other risks with other connections with people, right? And so that was really based on the work that I have done. And so the fact that I was able to get back to that space so quickly when this trauma happened was because of where I'm at in my healing, that maybe what happened isn't more or less than before. However, it is different in that I process it differently because my body has built resilience. And energetically, I have built a lot of resilience that I'm able to move through things and regulate my nervous system better and all of this stuff that now I am able to get to the deeper layers of the core wounds of the trauma. And that's where my body is leaning with all of these deep betrayals that are coming up. And so when I was with Sam and sharing that in TRE, that she's like, wow, this is really heavy. There's a lot of stuff. My guess is that was probably from deep core wounds that I probably haven't had access to for a long time.
Yeah.
And that's why it was so heavy, because even though I've been doing Reiki, even though I've been doing healing and all of this stuff and EMDR and every type of therapy, in the end, it's the more we heal, our body naturally knows what we're ready for and it brings it up for us.
Yes, absolutely.
And you have to let your body and your brain guide. And so I think that's what was happening. So like you said, like if someone is very fearful, they don't want to feel this loss, they don't want to feel this pain, they're not going to until their bodies know they're capable of handling it. Because if you think about it from like an evolutionary standpoint, why would you completely dismantle the thing that you're trying to protect? Right? Like it makes no sense. So like our body kind of knows what we can handle and what we can't at different stages. And it'll share with us either certain memories or certain triggers or whatever. And when things come up, that means they are ready to be processed and worked through.
Right.
So we shouldn't really be as fearful. I mean, of course, I will say like, and PTSD and things like that, especially right after things like, obviously I'm not saying you shouldn't be fearful, but I'm saying like you're deeper in your trauma and you've been like working on stuff and things come up and you're like, oh my gosh, am I going to get stuck again? Your body is telling you what you can handle now.
If only we weren't social creatures where we wouldn't tremor, where we stopped tremoring, if we didn't have that, we wouldn't have PTSD like we do. We wouldn't have suicide rates like we do. We wouldn't have the mental illness that we do, because we would be releasing the tension and trauma that is now being stored in our bodies. But understanding the human body, overcoming these from a foundational base by regulating our nervous system through that very gentle and safe way through TRE, we're regulating the nervous system and also creating this space for post-traumatic growth. So this is on the other end of that S curve.
Yep.
And that is the beauty of it, is we come out on top with more knowledge about ourselves and also a way to connect with others. So.
Yeah. Yeah. And after that TRE session, like, and you said we didn't even do the full thing. We did that for a while. And the next day I took an Epsom salt bath and I just felt so relaxed. Like my soul was just like,
Mm.
yeah. I was like, I cannot remember the last time that I felt that relaxed, like body,
Oh,
brain, soul, like it was really good. So, I think adding in these type of modalities with typical trauma therapy can be so supportive because you actually are targeting where trauma is stored in the body and working with the nervous system. And a lot of people know by now, like the vagus nerve, right? Like that is something that really, really helps us tap into our rest and digest system, which is our checks and balances of our survival state nervous system. So when we can physically find a way to tap into that, that is super powerful because we're allowing our brain, we're like kind of overriding and say, okay, turn this on now. We're going to calm down. That's what's happening. And
yeah.
so it's really powerful for your body to be able to access something like that, to be able to release and move forward in processing trauma, but also in our bodies as well. Because honestly, that's where trauma is. We all know that, like, trauma is stored in the body. Yeah, we have a mental experience with it. Yeah, we have emotional experiences, but in the end, it's in the body.
It's true.
It's very
That's
interesting.
so true.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. All right, Sam, do you have anything else to share? Anything you think people would be really interested in? Any frequently asked questions?
Oh, FAQs, lots of FAQs. Anyone can do this. Anyone can experience the tremor mechanism. If anyone wants to work with me, we'll definitely throw my email down, throw my Instagram down. I'm happy to send information out to people. I work virtually, in person, in Phoenix, Arizona. I do individuals and I do groups. Okay. So I do yoga, sound baths, and TRE. TRE is typically my main focus because I like to spin it and bring all of them together. Bring this beautiful integrative approach to healing for individuals. And I do my best to come from a loving space. We squash egos. I do my best to keep it safe for everyone. So yeah, that's what I do. I wish I could bring clients on and just have them tell you about their wild experiences. My gosh, I have one story before we let go.
Yeah.
So I had this client and I started working with them, and they're one of my original clients, and they started working with me a little closed off. They had experienced therapy in their life, throughout their life. Their parents got divorced. They had probably done 18 years plus of therapy on their own. They are a therapist.
Wow.
They've done EMDR, CBT, all different types of therapies. And then we're like, hey, let me just try TRE. So I start working with this client, and we're working. The first 6 weeks, we're like, okay, wow, I'm learning that I'm a little bit more resilient to the stress at work. That feels really good. I don't think about the things that I normally would in the shower at the end of the day. Like, okay, that's a win. 3 months in, this individual is like, literally nothing stresses me out. They're like, I can do anything. I feel really great. And then it was 6 months. And I remember leaving that session and not talking to a soul because it had just shaken me to my core. And it always gets me a little emotional because it impacted me so deeply. This individual was like, Sam, I went to my therapist today. I was talking to them and telling them about doing TRE with you. And then I was talking about what I've been doing for the last couple of months. And the last month I've been riding my horse every single day. And I'm booking a scuba trip. And her therapist said, hang on a second. Can you just stop right there? And they're like, sure. Can you rewind and tell me again what you just said? Oh, I've been riding my horse for the last 3 weeks and I have a scuba trip planned. So this individual stopped riding their horse 6 years ago, stopped scuba diving 6 years ago from an assault and from a physical experience with their horse. They stopped trusting themselves to ride a horse. And so they kind of were like, oh, I'm not really into jumping or doing the really intense things that you do when you ride a horse.
Yeah.
So they told me this, and it shook me to my core, because this individual has just a wealth of knowledge as a therapist themselves, and a large background in therapy. And it was TRE that was able to like bring them to their normal that they used to be before the trauma. So we were able to grow together, and that to me, that's exactly why I do what I do. 100%.
Yeah, that's amazing. And there's something to be said too, in like, you can logically know, but you can't always access, right? It's like, you can have all the knowledge in the world, you can have all of the toolkits, you can be the smartest person. However, if you don't tap into your body, if you don't listen to your intuition, if you don't start doing more of the healing and listening to your body and allowing it to lead, it's not going to bring you as far. Because I can still have a trauma response and a trigger and know it's happening because of this. And I can calm myself down and I can get back to a regulated state, but it can still happen again, right? And even knowing that something is happening is not enough into shifting it, because those parts of our brain are very different, right? So I can't even tell you how many times I've been like, I know exactly what's happening and why. I just can't do anything about it. I cannot access it in my body and in my nervous system to be able to get this out of my body. And I wonder if I would have done that earlier. I really wonder, truly. Cause yeah, I mean, I'm like, I sit there and I'm like, my therapist is like, she's like, you know what you're talking about. She's like, you just need someone to sometimes like reflect it back to you to make the breakthrough and get it out of your body. She's like, keep going to Pilates every single day. She's like, do more Pilates. And I'm like, okay, fine.
Yeah.
So, I'm like, all right. So I find it very interesting that you're like, yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter if you're a therapist, if you've been doing it for 20 years, it doesn't, at some point there's different things that you need. And I have found success in that with Reiki and with TRE recently and sound bath and like, those kind of things that I think it's very, very interesting. And I think eventually will be research-based science, but we don't quite have that yet. However, I will say I love it, and it's been very helpful.
I'm so happy that you've had those experiences, and I'm so grateful for you and having you in my life, and just experiencing your essence as a person. You are incredible, just as literally.
Thank you.
Sitting here and I'm like, you are such a light, and your community knows that, and I'm just very blessed to have connected with you, and to be able to share the same path in a certain way.
I know. And that's super cool. And yeah, I'm grateful for all of the things that you've helped unlock in me too. Like you said, you're a nice little activator. And I'm like, oh, intuition, calm down. Let's calm down here. I don't know if I'm ready for this yet. But it's been lovely. And yeah, so for people who are like, okay, I'm a little skeptical, but there's a whole bunch of stuff that within what you do, there's a lot of research behind it, right? Yes. And I think the only thing that isn't fully research backed yet is like the energy thing. But again, I think that's coming. But I just love the testimonies that you have. And I love that, because TRE, you actually are trained in, right? Like you have to have certain courses and understanding the body. And it's not just like, hey, I'm going to make you shake. Like it's not it's not that, right? You have to be able to understand the human body to an extent where you can support others through it. Like she said, yes, there are exercises and things that you can do. You may have seen stuff online where it was like, oh, TRE exercise. However, I would say, especially like your first few times, work with someone who knows what they're doing so they can guide you properly. Because I know that like at first it was hard for me to access. So I might be like, well, whatever, or, it can be too much or whatever. And that's when I think someone having a trained eye can really help you, because they know what to look for. Whereas you're starting out and there's a whole new sensation, and it can be really supportive to have someone to kind of check you. And also the energy work is kind of supportive too. So I'm just saying, put
Oh
it all
yeah,
together.
it's
And
a
the
whole
sound bath alone, like when can I go next? That's what I'm saying. Like, let's go. Because
Tuesday
that
nights at 6. Come
Tuesday
on
nights.
by.
All right, Tuesday nights. That's what's going
Yeah.
on. But yeah, I mean that's what needs to happen, because I think I wouldn't necessarily start off with something like this at the beginning of your healing journey, because like you said, you have to have some kind of connection with your body. Sound bath, like you said, I mean that's pretty beginner. It's just you kind of meditating, relaxing. As long as you can handle some vibration in your body, it's kind of cool. You're not always going to have those huge releases. Sometimes it's just going to be connecting and calming, and that's good enough too. And like I said, your body will progress as to when it's ready. But
Yes, your body will tell you. You'll know when it's time. You'll know when it's time. Sound baths, definitely go for it. Yoga, go for it.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you're wondering about any of that, I'm always happy to consult with you if you're wondering, hey, is this for me right now? Yeah, I feel free to ping me. I'm more than happy to share my knowledge and see if it's right.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Sam, for coming on today and sharing your knowledge and your light and all the things. It's been a pleasure. I'll make sure that anyone who wants to get in contact with you, you're tagged on a few of my stuff too. But everything will always be on Instagram. And I know we have like Nutra LLC, and I think it's nutra.llc. For people to connect. So everything will be in the show notes. If you have any questions, if you want to connect with her, check it out. And yeah, we will talk to you all soon. Thanks again for opening your mind and being in this conversation. It's cool stuff as you just get deeper in your healing journey. And I am so glad that you shared this with us, because this is an area that I don't know as much about, but I am starting to fall in love with. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Of course. All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.